Hello, David.
Evening, Jim.
How are you?
Evening, everybody. I'm very well.
Good. Well, I've been looking forward to seeing you again, and we've got a lot of questions to ask you about last night and just about things in general. Yes, I want you to really get purposely paranoid for this.
Okay.
And we're going to do a couple of commercials, and then we'll come back and meet David and talk and hear a lot of Pink Floyd. Into 97.1 KLSX, and I've been giving this guy some certain amount of crap since he's been here because I like to, but with all seriousness, I think that it's an understatement that this man's music has moved me over many years that I've been playing Pink Floyd, and it's a pleasure to have David Gilmour with us tonight, so welcome.
Well, I thank you.
Now, you guys have had just a modicum of success lately, really. Well, how many shows did you do here the first time around?
62, I think. About 60.
62, and then you came back and this was the first of the next leg of the tour, right?
Yes, this is the first. We've been down to Australia, New Zealand, and Japan in the meantime.
Now, are you at all, you're certainly used to this kind of acceptance of Pink Floyd's music, but since there was so much time off, not that you guys, because you put out an album once every 3 weeks before, but but there has been some time since the final cut gone by. Were you at all surprised at how well this was all received?
Yes, I think I'd have to say I was. I thought we'd be fine. I didn't think that we wouldn't get anyone to come out to see shows and stuff, but the actual extent of how fast tickets did sell was a surprise. It was great.
I noticed that last night one of the comments that was made was, and you know how we love talking demographics in radio, but that the age spread of the audience was unbelievable, which I think is great. Very, very young people and, real old farts like myself. And older.
Not many that old.
Not many that old, but it was interesting to see people that are 15, 16, and then, all the way through. That seems to me that either people have heard about this, or that the music is, that it's a proof that of how timely Pink Floyd stuff is.
Well, it certainly seems to have caught on to the younger generation, as we call them. It's amazing on stage because, of course, where I am on stage, mostly I can see the young people because they're the keenest ones to get tickets and stuff, and they like to sit up the front.
Yeah.
And you really have to get out into the audience and take a wander around if you want to see the rest of the people who are out there quietly grooving away, which I don't get to do too often.
Let me ask you some specific thing here on this momentary lapse of reason. The song Learning to Fly, which could have a number of different interpretations to it, especially with what you've been through. But I'm going to ask you one that doesn't have to do with going off in a different direction. Have you ever, when I read the lyrics and listen to this thing, and I have an interpretation of it that at least part of the subtext of this thing has to do with your soul, you as a person learning to fly. Have you ever had any sort of physical manifestation of that?
Of learning to fly?
Yeah, like...
I have had flying dreams constantly. I used to have a serial one at one point in my life, many, many years ago.
Really?
And every night I'd go to bed and it would be the next little episode of it. And that went on for some weeks.
A serial dream? In other words, you would go so far and then pick it up the next night?
Yeah.
But not the exact same...
No, different. It just happened once in my life. But the song was actually inspired from me actually learning physically to fly an aeroplane.
Oh, really? Because
we thought it was a nice idea when it started, just on that plane, but then it developed into encompassing all sorts of other things as well.
Yeah, because in the lyrics you talk about the soul and, being tethered to this mortal coil and so forth. And in the video also I thought it was wonderful, the symbolism of having an Indian.
Very Carlos Castaneda, yeah.
Yeah, very much so. Okay. We're speaking with David Gilmour. We have a lot of questions to ask him. You're listening to 97.1 KLSX. Beautiful song from Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason. That's called Learning to Fly. Our very special guest tonight is Dave Gilmour, and we'll be back to talk to him right after this. We're back now with David Gilmour, lead guitarist of Pink Floyd. And they played last night to a packed house at the LA Coliseum. I was there, and a very, very interesting show. I want to discuss one of the songs on the new album as it relates to one on Dark Side of the Moon, and that is on The Turning Away. When I listen to this song, you know, Pink Floyd has always had, one of the things I've always liked about the band is not only the wonderful ethereal quality of the music, but what it had to say. It's always had a point of view.
Yeah.
And certainly this song has a point of view, and it talks about the need for each of us to, you know, kind of face up to the responsibility that in some way we are, in fact, our brother's keepers, and that we have a responsibility to this. How do you manifest that in your life personally?
Well, I don't know. I don't know about manifesting it in my personal life, but it's something that concerns me very much. I mean, the current swing of politics in Europe, well, in England, particularly in the States, you know, is very moving towards the right. Doesn't appeal to me at all, and I must say that I think it's terrible the way that all the self, the I, is coming back right on top of things.
Yeah.
The caring for the less fortunate than ourselves is reaching a low ebb. You know, that's been moving downhill, I think, generally since the 60s. This song is really just a plea to reverse that trend. Not something I like to do is preach in songs, but make an exception once in a while.
Well, I wouldn't say that you guys preach, but you've always, Floyd has been known to take the time to look at things, and really on a much deeper level than wave slogans. It seems that you, in the past, the songs have dealt with, you know, rather unique perspective on these problems. We have seen that in the 80s, the era of Ronald Reagan, I, me, mine, over here.
Yeah. We have it in England too with Thatcher.
Yeah. Ms. Margaret.
Who, I'd be very happy to say goodbye to the pair of them myself.
Hopefully they will be turning away soon. This is 97.1 KLSX. We're talking with Dave Gilmour of Pink Floyd. This is a song called On the Turning Away. You'll have to excuse me for that. David said, no, Jim, no, play the correct song. Thank you so much. That was one slip. We want to play On the Turning Away. This is 97.1 KLSX, and we'll see if we can possibly do this together. I love professional radio.
At least it's live.
At least it's live. Thank you for that, David. 97.1 KLSX. Beautiful song called On the Turning Away from Momentary Lapse of Reason. David, this song is, to me, lyrically and subject-wise, something of an update of us and them, in a way. Would you agree with that? I
haven't thought about it, to be quite honest. It hadn't actually struck me, but yes, I would say that they're connected.
Yeah, kind of the same subject and feeling of it. Since Us and Them were written, or was written and performed, and you were just talking about how it seems that we're going less and less toward understanding and more toward self-gratification.
Get me some.
Get me some. Get me my pile. Yeah. Do you think it's gotten worse since those days? That seems to be what you're saying?
It seems to be at the moment. I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's hard to say that because, I mean, there are still things happening like Live Aid and the great big benefit things which show there are a lot of people out there who do care about what's going on and want to put their money where their mouths are and want to do something about it. But that is kind of against the general trend.
Yeah, that's why Live Aid gave me a lot of faith, because it seemed like rock and roll had found its conscience again. You know, after My Limousine's Longer Than Your Limousine.
Yeah.
And to do that gave me a lot of faith. Now, last night when you played Us and Them, you had some new footage.
Yeah.
And it was of the situation in South Africa.
Some of it's that, yeah.
Yeah, apartheid, which I thought was a pretty graphic example of what the song talks about. What are your feelings on that? Obviously, you don't seem like a pro-Boda person to me.
Oh, no, I mean, I think it's a terrible thing. You wouldn't catch me playing in Sun City.
There you go. Yeah.
It's a very long, complicated subject, isn't it?
Yeah, we don't need to get into the specifics, but it's interesting. It must be more interesting, I would think, for an Englishman, raised in the tradition of the sun never sets on the British Empire, to come to grips with really the last vestige of this kind of attitude.
Yes, it is. The British Empire is something that's not... that losing doesn't affect me terribly much. It's not something that I'm upset at losing.
You're not going to think less of England for doing it?
No, I mean, they obviously thought of themselves as a benevolent paternal society, which has some truth in it, but it's only a small part of the truth, unfortunately.
The approach that Gandhi took to free India from British rule, why do you think that has not been tried to this point in South Africa? Especially since he started in South Africa.
Yes, I don't know. The non-violent thing, I don't know. You have to be a very, very special man, I think, to carry that off. It's a matter of finding a personality that can lead that thing. And I don't think it would work anyway. I think Gandhi was already a very significant political figure, and whereas the black people of South Africa don't have anyone like that, or, I mean, the closest they've got to it, although he wasn't completely non-violent, was Nelson Mandela, and look what happened to him. He's still in jail since, when has he put in jail? In 60-something? Yeah. Early 60s, something.
David Gilmour on KLSX. For want of the price of tea and a slice, the old man died. It's called Poetry, Us and Them, from Dark Side of the Moon. We're here with David Gilmour. David, since we just played something from Dark Side, I know you've never been asked this question before, but you must have given some thought to why this album, Dark Side of the Moon, is still on the record charts. It's the longest charted album in the history of recorded music.
Yeah, it's getting so expensive to keep bribing Billboard, though.
You gotta keep sending them bottles of booze and, taking them out to lunch. It goes far beyond being, so far beyond, I think even reasons maybe we can explain, but obviously it has touched a chord in so many people. I
guess it must have done. I mean, it's a great album. It still doesn't sound dated or anything. It's, to me, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm biased, but it still sounds like a very good record to me. I'd be proud of it if we did it today.
Yeah.
It'd be very nice to make another one.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess you don't even know when you're doing something like this that, I mean, certainly you
don't know the extent of it, no. I mean, with that one, we did know that, we all knew that we were making a good record, and it was going to be a lot better than anything we'd done before. And we all had a very strong feeling about it. And when the cover and all the, the little stuff that finishes it off, the artwork and stuff like that all came together beautifully as well. And it made a really good sort of package, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
It was, we knew we were onto something. I mean, we thought we'd sell a few more records than we'd sold before, but as we'd sold virtually nothing ever before.
It was an amazing turnaround, but, it gets more, the album is more amazing as each day goes by, and it's still there because I've given that a lot of thought to, thinking about, why it touches me and why it does not get old for me to listen to it. And I play it, not only at home, but I mean, at work. I've played this album a few times. I know the album. I still hear sometimes something I've never heard before in it. And it's fascinating that how many millions of people, somehow it's touched a chord in them. We're talking with David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. We're going to be back, talk a little bit about his solo work. We're going to talk about the change in personnel in Pink Floyd, and lots of questions. And maybe if Mr. Gilmour is up for it, we may even take a phone call. Would you be up for that?
Sure.
Okay, we may have some people call in and ask a question or two of your own to David Gilmour. This is 97.1 KLSX. We'll be right back. More, and we will open up the telephones and take some questions from the audience. David has promised to stick around till about 9 o'clock, so we're going to talk and play Pink Floyd music, and we've got something coming up from one of his solo albums, his first solo album, in a minute. Let's talk here, though, before we get into that work. Let's talk, you said you like difficult questions. I have a couple here for you.
Good, Jim.
Yes, I brought a couple of let's put David on the spot questions because I knew you would like that. Let's talk about your former partner.
Yeah.
He Be Gone.
He be gone.
He be gone.
You probably know more about it than me, Jim. You toured with him.
Well, I was fortunate enough to go out on a date or two, and I had a very good time, as a matter of fact. It was interesting to see what you do for a living and how you have to live your life, you know. I enjoyed that.
Illuminating, I should imagine.
It was very illuminating. Yeah, we were talking on the phone, you and I, the other day about as many interviews that I've done, and I've heard these horror stories about what traveling is. And I was telling David, I always thought, well, geez, these wimpy guys. Come on, you know, you've got all these chicks, and you're playing in front of, on stages in front of thousands of people, and you're going to gripe at me about airports and airplanes. There is something to be said about that.
I'm not griping.
Well, I had a wind shear in Dallas that I found. We all found God on the plane. It was an amazing moment. Anyway, to get back to Roger, what would you say has been the biggest change in Floyd since Roger left?
God. It's, I mean, from recent years, I'd have to say that the biggest change is it's a lot more cheerful and a lot easier on everyone. You know, there's not Roger's angst being laid on everyone at every moment. I'm trying to develop my own
angst. Fill the gap.
I'm not quite there yet.
Now, let's.
I mean, obviously, we've lost someone, a great lyricist, and that, you know, is a problem. Obviously, for me to either try to live up to something like that, or to get other people to help me, and I did a bit of both. And one can only do the best that one can do. But it's been a very challenging time, and I'm very, very proud of it. I have to say, I'm very proud of the record.
Now, when you we'll draw one little line here, a rule for us, without getting into personal conflict on either side. When you say angst, I think that, you know, without spilling any beans here or dredging up anything, it's been public knowledge that Roger had a rather strong point of view from what he thought was right and wrong, and I take it that it wasn't like completely democratic.
In what went on beforehand?
Yes.
No, it wasn't completely democratic, but it actually was more democratic than people might suppose, because we usually agreed.
Is that right?
Yes. I mean, we're usually very happy about if Roger absolutely wanted to do something, then we usually felt it was a good thing to do anyway. I mean, there weren't that many times during our years together when we actually disagreed radically on how things should be done. There were one or two moments. I mean, there were obviously arguments about a specific song.
Sure.
Saying, well, I think this one should be more like this and like that. And that's once in a while, like, Uncomfortably Numb, we had huge fights because I wanted to do it one way and he wanted to do it another way. And we wound up with a compromise that neither of us were 100% happy with, but it's still great. So, you know.
When you, is there a capsule reason you can give us for the split up, or is it like a myriad of things and it just came together and you went hell with it?
The reason is that we started to disagree more about how we should do things. I think one tends to polarize a bit more as you get older in the way you want to do things. And Roger certainly progressively lost the will to compromise on anything. I mean, you must know this. I mean, he doesn't have to compromise anymore, really, and being on his own, and that, I know that makes him happier.
Yeah.
But when we did get to a point during the making of the film, and very much on the final cut, where I thought he was doing things very wrong, and I would say so, and it started getting very, very, very difficult because he didn't like it, and he'd been most of his time with us. If we didn't like something, we wouldn't do it. You know, he didn't argue very much about it.
I see.
But you know, on the final cut, things came back that we'd rejected on the Wall album, and Roger wanted to do them again. We still didn't think they were very good, and in fact, I'm not talking about the whole album. I think there are 3 really good songs on the final cut, but I think some of the rest of it is a bit weak.
I see. So it came over a long period of time.
It came over a long period of time, but it got to a point where Roger couldn't cope with any dissent anymore, basically. And the Final Cut album was a very, very difficult period for him and for me.
Now,
he would think, he said to me, you're just being obstructive, when I would argue with him, and I would say, I'm not being obstructive, Roger, I'm being constructive. I want this to be a good thing.
I see.
And but our views about what would make it a good thing had become so diametrically opposed, I guess, that he felt that he couldn't carry on.
Geez, it's odd we're talking about the same guy, because I found Roger to be, completely wishy-washy, never had an opinion of his own.
Yeah.
Okay, now, this is a question that has been asked before about other bands, but you guys, because of the point of view of Pink Floyd, which is one of the reasons I've always... why Pink Floyd has touched me so much is that over the years it has had a point of view, whether I agreed with it or not. Your writing, the writing has been concerned with different things, as is carried on with the new album. But there is a question that people have that goes something like this. How can a band that talks about the world finding itself, getting along, stop warring, stop having racial problems and bigotry, and why can't we all learn to live together, why this cannot apply on a personal level with, let's say, John, Paul, George, and Ringo, or Roger and David and Nick and Rick?
I don't know. It's a very strange thing. The ego is a very strange thing. It's a very strange animal. If you leave an ego on its own for too long, it can, without mauling it fairly regularly, egos need to be mauled occasionally, If they don't get a bit of that, they can turn into very, very strange things.
Now, I heard this, I talked to Roger about this one, about the same thing. And he had a very interesting answer. In fact, he was asked from the audience, one of his shows, that question. How come you and Dave can't get along if you and Dave can sing about? And he had a very interesting answer, which I thought was, the point of view, and I'm paraphrasing him now, and I hope I get it correct, because I would like to live past next week, was that when he writes songs like Us and Them and these tunes, that he's talking about people who have nuclear weapons to play around with, that they have to act more than simply human, but that there will always be personal conflicts between people on a personal level, and we're never going to get rid of that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's basically...
We always agree, me and Roger.
Okay, we're going to move away from Snide, and we're talking with David.
We did generally usually agree on the policies and the things that we wanted to do. It was only very, very late on that the disagreements became such that it became impossible for us to be able to cooperate anymore.
Okay, so these reports of cricket bats at 10 paces are pretty exaggerated.
Pretty exaggerated. And did someone actually in one of the concerts stand up and say that he was Syd Barrett?
Yes.
And could he come up and jam or something?
Yes, we summarily dismissed that boy. Speaking of Mr. Barrett and people who are no longer here, this is KLSX. 97.1 KLSX. Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here. Our special guest tonight is David Gilmour. I really appreciate you coming by. It was very, very kind of you. He's going to be here till about 9 o'clock, and I thought we would take a phone call from somebody out there. They said we have a question here in the Orange County line. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
My name's Todd McDonald.
Oh, Todd, do you have a question for David?
Yeah, I'd like to know what was the inspiration behind the song Brain Damage on the Dark Side of the Moon album, and what does he think Roger Waters meant when he said, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon?
All right, thank you.
Gosh. How does it go? I can't remember it. Such a long time ago. I don't know what he meant. I guess, I think what he meant when he said he'll see you on the dark side of the moon is that we'll all wind up mad one day, probably.
It is a lot of statements on madness and kind of introspection and that kind of bizarre insanity that, which again is bizarre that this subject is so near and dear to so many people.
Yeah, very popular subject. I mean, I can't remember how the words go to that song. I haven't played it or sung it for so long that I can't quite remember how it all goes. Besides, it's Roger's words. You'd have to much better asking him. Wait till he comes in here and ask him that.
Let's take somebody else here. Hello, this is KLSX.
Hello.
Hi, do you have a question for David?
Yes.
Hi.
Hey, David. I'd like to know why you guys don't play good old tunes, you know, like Childhood's End.
Like what?
Childhood's End.
Childhood's End, yes. Well, I never considered doing that one. You know, we looked through all the albums, and we chose the songs for a number of reasons. And we think we've picked the best selection. I mean, some people are always going to want something different. There's a large contingent of people out there every night who want to hear echoes more often than we're willing to do it.
It's hard when you have a catalog like because there's always going to be somebody that's...
I never thought of Childhood's End, funnily enough. It is one of mine, of course. I'd forgotten about that one. But, yeah, it was never that much fun to do live, but we should think about that one.
All right. That's 97.1 KLSX. Let me ask you, well, I'll tell you what, would you hand me those spots? Let me do a little business here, and then I want to come back and ask you some more questions about the direction of Floyd. Thank you, Debbie. And also about a piece of work on one of your solo albums. We'll be back with David Gilmour. Our guest tonight is David Gilmour, lead guitarist of Pink Floyd, and they just played last night out at the Coliseum. Were you surprised? You got quite a reaction to Comfortably Numb, which we're going to play a little bit later on. That was an interesting reaction to that song.
Yeah. It always goes down well.
That's always been one of the most requested Floyd tunes ever since I've been in L.A.
Yeah.
It's an amazing song. Let me ask you a couple things here, Mr. Gilmour. Do you feel that the new Floyd's direction, which is kind of moving away from concept albums, is going to be something you'll continue in the future?
We thought about the concept album thing for a long time, actually. I mean, we had months, so we had plenty of time to think about it, and we were trying. We hoped that we would get that somehow it would tie in, and we'd be able to wrap it up that way. But I mean, if some of the albums, like the old albums, like Animals, only just made it as a concept album at the very last minute, and
oh, really?
It wasn't originally a concept album. It was 3 tracks, and we changed the titles, and Roger changed the titles and adjusted the lyrics very slightly. I mean, Dogs was called Raving and Drooling before, I think, was it? Or Sheep was called Raving and Drooling, and it wasn't, but it didn't take much to steer it into the direction of Sheep. And Dogs as well was called something. You Gotta Be Crazy, it was called. So that was, if you like, a slightly artificial concept album. And we looked at this one and thought, well, can we tie it all up with one thing that encompasses everything, and then do a bit of adjusting? And I guess in the end I just thought it wasn't worth messing with some of the music and things to try and do that. And it didn't quite feel that way, but I don't have anything whatsoever against doing one again. But if it comes up, we'll do one, but if it doesn't, we won't.
I see. Now, is there any conflict then in your mind about, let's say, when I went and watched the stage show last night, and there was obviously, tremendous production, and without question probably the best light show I've ever seen on a rock and roll stage, and a lot of the props that one expects at a Pink Floyd show, but again, minus a theme or a concept to it. Is there any disparity in your mind about doing that, about having all that stuff, but there is no theme? In other words, they just kind of relate to one song after another song after another?
The sort of traditional way that we have done concerts over the years is that they have had a theme, if you like, because we've tended to do one whole album in one half and then another whole album in another half. We've always, usually what we do is we play the newest album as the first half and the previous album as the second half. That's more or less been the standard way we've done concerts for, 15 years. But there was no way that we could do that on this show because we had, the last album was the final cut, which we've never played any of, and it's really more Roger's album than any other album is, and we wouldn't want to do that. We couldn't do The Wall because that's a whole concert.
Oh, sure.
So logically, we'd have been going back to a 10-year-old album, to Animals, if we were to do a whole album. So it just didn't make any sense to do it that way. So we're doing basically the new album in the first half as we did then, but it's sort of definitely greatest hits and entertain people for the second half. But no, I don't feel any. I don't have any difficulty with getting to grips with doing that.
I see. Okay. Let's go back to the new album for a moment. There's a song that I want to play and follow up with something on a solo album, and this is A New Machine. Some of what is kind of reminiscent to me in this song called A New Machine to a song you did on your solo album called No Way Out of Here. Yeah. Do you have... now, I know you didn't write No Way Out of Here, but you sang it.
I chose it.
Yeah, you chose it.
Because it fitted exactly what I liked, what I would have said if I could have said it that well.
Well, explain to me then this, because this is a very lonely or lonesome perspective that you see as kind of someone who is a prisoner trapped in this being, and you really have no choice. You're just kind of waiting it out.
Yeah, well, you said it, Jim.
I mean, but it seems like a lack. I mean, the only faith you have in here is don't worry, you're going to die someday. I mean, well, I think the question I'm asking here is it that lonely of an existence for you? Do you have no faith in anything afterwards?
I don't have any faith in anything afterwards, no. That is my belief. But the moments that things like those songs come out of are they're not the dominant moments in my life. They are moments. They happen once in a while when you feel like that. And,
now, this is interesting to me. You have no afterlife belief whatsoever.
No.
It's gone in its darkness once it's over. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Now, this seems awfully odd because we're talking before about you have one of the most ethereal voices, which I would equate to when I listen to certain Pink Floyd songs. It seems like it's touching something in me that is more than flesh and blood, that is getting to that part of me. So how can... Am I hearing things completely wrong here?
I don't think you're hearing anything wrong, no. I wouldn't know how to begin explaining that, but...
it just seems interesting that an atheist would be able to sing in what I would consider a very spiritual sounding manner.
Well... the spiritual part of one isn't necessarily to do with the life hereafter. It's there is a spiritual now, isn't there?
Very good. Unfortunately, we're trapped with this little spirit running around inside of us. This is something called A New Machine. We're talking with David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Now, there's another real happy-go-lucky song from David Gilmour.
Happy-go-lucky sort of guy, Jim.
Yeah. Suicide prevention is called. One note they could use that in their in their campaign. We're talking with David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. He will be with us for about another 20 minutes. We're going to do some more capitalism here, Dave. You are in America now, and we come back. We'll take another couple of phone calls from the audience. This is 97.1 KLSX, and we are sitting here with David Gilmour, who's our special in-studio guest. And we're going to continue taking some phone calls and talking to him. Let's see, let's take line 1, 2, 3, 4. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. You got a question for David?
Sure do. My name's Steve. Dave.
Yeah.
I saw the show up in Oakland.
Yeah.
I was there 2 nights. It was a great show. It was the indoor arena.
Yeah.
And I noticed, someone told me there was 2 different productions, one for the small arenas and one for the big Coliseum like Los Angeles. I was at that one last night, too.
Yeah.
And I was at the Oakland show. They had a bed that exploded, and I was expecting to see an airplane exploded at the L.A. Coliseum last night, but you didn't have the bed again. I was wondering if you ever had a plane in the show, or what went on with that. Also, what's your favorite guitar? I know it's got to be a Stratocaster.
Yeah, the favorite guitar's got to be a Stratocaster. There's no fundamental difference between the indoor and the outdoor show, actually. We put on about the same show. This time we've upgraded a lot of the lighting stuff, and the lasers are more powerful, but we've tried to sort of add a 10% improvement on everything all the way through. But we're constantly trying to upgrade and make everything a bit better. But the show is, fundamentally, it's the same show. We don't have a different show for outdoors and for indoors.
Very good. Let's take one more call. Hello?
Hi.
Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name's Chip Bennett.
Chip, what's your question for David?
My question is, I had heard a lot of rumors about Syd Barrett, whether he was actually alive or, actually gone or passed away and all that. I was just kind of wondering what actually, is up with Syd Barrett, and what David Gilmour is actually, if he's still alive, what David Gilmour's affiliation is with him.
You're talking about Syd Barrett.
Well, yeah, Syd Barrett.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, he's alive, yeah. I don't know how much fun that life is for him. He lives in Cambridge in England, and he doesn't really do anything. He doesn't find it. He can't really communicate with other people. He's not really changed very much in years now. I haven't seen him for a long time. I have spoken to his brother and his sister in the last couple of years about him. I did want to go and see him at one point, but his sister Rose didn't think it was a terribly good idea, because when he gets reminded of what he had going for him in the past, somewhere inside that strange brain of his, he gets very depressed, and it's not good for him. So they try not to remind him too much about it.
Very sad story, but
it's very sad.
We wish him well. David, let me ask you. This is another question on Roger, who is Roger Waters, who's left the band for good, it looks like, obviously. Do you think you guys have
Let's
always...
say time heals all wounds, Jim. But,
yes, but we're talking about millennium here, right? Let's try to keep it within lifetimes, David.
Okay.
Pink Floyd has always garnered probably the most enigmatic public image until late of any band I can think of. I mean, you guys make Dylan look like a People magazine monger or something, Do you think that now, because after all these years of not seeking publicity, not having your picture taken, not all of that, do you think that has helped at all in quelling perhaps any problems you may have had of a transition from Roger leaving, in that if you and he and Nick had been like real visible, that may have made it different for Pink Floyd than the fact that you were not?
I don't really know. I don't think it makes that much difference, actually. I mean, if we had got a lot more personal publicity, then people would have seen that I did half the singing and all that stuff anyway. There is a certain amount of confusion about who does what within the band, obviously.
But you guys always had a rather, I mean, to use a gross example, a Lennon-McCartney arrangement. I mean, basically, it was because he had the more cutting-edge voice, you have the more ethereal voice, bass guitar, so on and so on. So, I mean, there is that parallel to be drawn there. Yet, those guys were... each one was made a point of being a household name, as opposed to you guys did exactly the opposite on purpose.
Yeah, well, we're not really changing that. I think it's worked up to now. I'm very happy with that arrangement, but I don't think that would have made any great difference in this parting of the ways myself.
97.1 KLSX, you and I are listening to a conversation with our guest, David Gilmour. We'll be back in just a moment. .1 KLSX and Run Like Hell from the Wall. We're talking with David Gilmour. We've got about 10 minutes, and then he has to take off. Let's take a couple more phone calls if we could.
Fine.
Hi, this is KLSX. You're on the air with David.
Hi, Jim and David Gilmour.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'd like to know, I've read a story, and this is my feeling on it anyway before I came across the story in High Times, that your music to me seems to be, and also what they described, seems to be something that the creativity of it and everything came across in the psychedelic revolution of the late 1960s. And I feel that your music's real creative, and the use of, maybe that you guys used LSD, is the reason why your music today still holds real.
Obviously, you've used LSD recently.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think we
Thanks a lot,
get
Well, just in answer to your question, I can tell you categorically that most of the people in the band had never touched LSD at that time in the late 60s, and some of them still haven't. And I don't think that while that can be a wonderful thing in its own time and place, it's not a necessity for creating any sort of music, or moving people, or doing any of the things that we intend to do when we make music.
Let's discuss this just for a minute. I don't want to get into a big drug discussion here, but this is an interesting point that's been made. In those days, and with that substance, that was a whole different approach to chemicals than crack, cocaine. I mean, this is in a whole different league and was for a whole different purpose. I don't know if people understand quite that unless they perhaps have taken it, but it was done for other reasons than to get high.
Yeah.
You would agree with that. And did you find, may I ask if you've taken it?
I have, yeah.
Yeah. Did you find it useful?
I don't really know. I mean, I don't know what the long-term effects of something like that are on one's personality. I couldn't really say. Not something I'd recommend.
No, we're not recommending it, but I think the point should be made that because I think that anybody who were to try that had better damn well know that this is not smoking a joint, and you had better, and this is not something it's not something to screw around with. Nobody's recommending it here, but it was more along the lines of peyote in American Indian culture.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Okay, let's take one more call. Hello, you're on the air.
Sharon Jenkins, and I'd like to ask two questions. First of all, do you guys have a new album in the works? And second, the French people really love you guys a lot. There was a lot of French people at the concert last night. I heard them talking in French, so I know they were there. And why do they love you so much?
Hey, firstly, well, there's not another album in the pipeline at the moment. We've been too busy doing this one that's come out recently and doing the tour that follows it up. And as for why the French should like us so much, I don't know. I don't know that they like us any more than the Americans seem to like us.
Interesting.
Do you?
Do I know? Do you know? Hill, are you still there?
Yes, I am. And
do you have an answer to your own question?
since 1967, Pink Floyd has been my favorite group. Everyone in South Bay knows. I've promoted their music. Everyone knows.
Are you French?
No, I'm not. I'm English, Irish, and Welsh. Jenkins is a Welsh name.
Ah, very good. Well, we thank you for your call.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Let me do a little business. We'll come back and say goodbye.
So, what are you doing to...
On KLSX, and for the last about hour and a half, David Gilmour has joined us here in the studio, and LA was obviously ready for you guys. And where are you off to next?
Strangely enough, we're off to Denver, Colorado next.
Denver, Colorado.
So that will be an even colder concert than last night, I imagine.
There are certain, as you know, cynics in this business.
Are there?
I don't. Well, yeah, right. No, not in this business. I try not to count myself as one of them. But a cynic may question if this is this concert thing here. Is Pink Floyd going to go on after this, or is this like, let's get the money and retire?
No, I have every intention of carrying it on. I mean, I'm now the ripe old age of 42. But what else am I going to do? I mean, I'm just not ready to retire.
And you're not going to go out and get a real job, so...
certainly not if I can help it, no. One can take socialism too far, you know.
Let me ask you about Nick and Rick.
Yeah.
How are the boys doing?
They're doing fine. They're having the time of their lives.
And Nick is actually... You told me this guy is a pilot?
Yeah, him and I both have pilot's licenses, yeah.
Somehow I can understand it in your case, but with the schizophrenia, the drummers are noted for. Yeah. I just don't picture him... dealing with aeronautics and.
No, he's much better at bookwork and stuff than I am. Certainly, he's a very good pilot. He's got a 2 or 3 years experience. He's coming up for all sorts of instrument ratings and twin engine ratings and stuff like that. Right. He's going for. He's way ahead of me.
Interesting. All right.
And he drives racing cars, of course, very high speed round racing tracks.
Yeah, that part I could picture. That part I could picture. Okay, well, I just want to thank you for coming down here. I enjoyed seeing you, and I wish you luck with what you're doing.
My pleasure.
And, keep making good music. David Gilmour, lead guitarist of Pink Floyd. I'm Jim Ladd. Thank you, David. This is 97.1 KLSX Los Angeles.